All right, coming at you on Casual Thursday.
Casual, I know you're making me feel better about myself today. It's November 18th, 2021. Welcome aboard, folks. This is the Crushing Iron Podcast. We are episode 531.
Yes, it is.
531 is a gloomy, wintry fall day here in Chattanooga. The cold weather's coming. Yesterday was gorgeous. It's like 60s, 70s. Beautiful day. Hope you got out and enjoyed something. You know, be flexible this time of year. I went over this in our Zoom call yesterday. I was like, November is like that transitional month where we're about 3 weeks away from where it's just kind of, once you go inside, there's no going back out again because you're not going to have any more really, really nice days, at least to be on your bike, unless you're hopping on a gravel bike or mountain biking, and most of you don't do that. So get out and enjoy yourself. Enjoy the nice, pleasant weather, and get ready for Thanksgiving. Greatest holiday.
I can tell you got a little bounce in your step, and I think it's because Thanksgiving's next
week. It is.
Like
I was rolling up. I dropped Hayden off at school this morning, and he's got a thankfulness hoedown, which I don't really know. That doesn't sound appropriate, but he's got something at school that they call the thankfulness hoedown. He's wearing he wears like a flannel shirt and jeans, and he's like, why do I have to wear jeans? I'm like, dude, listen, I get it. I don't wear jeans for that reason because they're restrictive. Like, I just feel like it's like a mask for your legs. You know, it's like, I just feel like it's just not comfortable. I don't wear jeans. I have one pair that I wear like maybe once a year. When I go to like a wedding or something, put like a pair of jeans. He was like, they don't feel good. I'm like, you're preaching to the choir, buddy. I know. So he was not happy about wearing jeans and wear flannel shirts. He looked quite dapper, I might have to say. So rolling up to drop him off at school this morning. And I was like, buddy, look over there. 6 turkeys on the track and like the field, like just wild, like free range.
They didn't bring them in?
No, that's what I thought. I was like, man, they're going all out for this hoedown.
They're in.
And I was like, dude, look over there. I was like, we rolled up and there's turkeys. It's almost Thanksgiving, and they're like legit, like how their feathers all like popping out, and like every kid's like going ballistic out the window, but. Yeah, it's Thanksgiving. It's I'm ready to roll. It's next week. It is the greatest holiday. You don't have to buy stuff for people and worry about and stress about putting a couple grand on your credit card. It's just about family, friends, football, and food. I mean, like that's what most of life should be about anyway.
Yeah, and
not about spending money.
Right, and if you went to run camp, you got the extra space in there.
You do have the
because
extra
we ate
space.
so much. You got a little stretch in that belly.
Yeah.
You can go down.
Yeah, we did.
Go hard.
Run camp's always. Yeah, it's strength training at run camp for 2 reasons. One, because there's so many hills, we do so much running, but then the other part of it is that we are always usually carrying a little bit extra weight up the hills. It's kind of like a strength training and kind of like wearing a vest. But no, it is. It's always a good time, and we're looking forward to putting those together next year. For those of you tuning in today or your first time, welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. You have a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe. And just podcasts in general, so we appreciate your time. We cover it all. We cover swim, bike, run detailed podcasts. We cover race recaps. We do race previews. We have on the very occasional guest. But for the most part, Mike and I, as coaches, athletes, best friends, sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through, what our athletes are going through. We work with a very wide range of athletes, from beginners to elite level amateurs, all across the globe, and kind of generally take the pulse of, what they are going through, training peak, comments, life, everything in between, and kind of throw out the vibe of that. And it usually speaks to many people because we're all kind of going through, might not be exactly similar, but we're all going through life. And the kind of, there's always kind of a common denominator, which is life and the struggles and the obstacles and the stresses that we have. And then you combine that with the focus and commitment and motivation that people have for endurance sports and triathlon specifically, and the goals we're trying to achieve, and stay structured and stay motivated and stay on task and stay optimistic and keep the good perspective. It's just we're all trying to find our way, just like you and I. We've both been doing this for a very long time, and that's where a lot of our experiences come through. We're not experts. We are definitely not professionals. We just been through it, still going through it. And one of the biggest reasons we started this podcast was just to not just connect with each other, but to hopefully communicate and talk through some of the pitfalls that we've had and the struggles that we've had in our hobbyist profession, that is triathloning in the past 10 or 15 years, and hopefully you can take something from it and apply it to your own life in a positive way. Speaking of positive ways, we have a Facebook group, Crushing Iron Group. If you want to be a part of that, answer one simple question. We'll let you right in. A lot of awesome people in there wanting to give you their advice. So you can hop in there. We'll do Q&As in there about once a month. But that's it. We have no sponsors, no ads, but we do have an agenda. Let's keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to try and gain something out of this podcast, if you don't mind. No, we started talking a little bit beforehand about how, it's been a long couple years. I feel like we're, the holiday season is always a little trickier for training, and people have trouble keeping their mojo going. Good vibes out to the people that are racing Ironman this weekend. After a long year, a late season race has got to be tough. And I was talking to some of those guys yesterday, and I was just like, you got one day out there. It's been tough. I know you're probably at the end of your rope, but just dig in and get it done, But, it's like we're getting through the holidays. Holidays are always tough as they are to keep motivation and keep the spirits alive. But we were talking before the podcast, and I feel the same thing. I think it's just been a really tough year and a half or so for, like on the surface, but also low level stuff that you don't maybe notice. And it's just kind of been building and building. And I think I do feel optimistic that we're kind of cranking.
Stop. Wait a minute. You feel optimistic? I'm usually the optimistic one in this relationship.
I know. I've been meditating a lot.
Yeah, I can see that.
No, but I'm just trying to look at it like this idea of whenever we are reaching maybe a breakthrough, it gets the hardest. And I think it's been hard, and I think it may still be hard for a while yet, but I think we're figuring out ways to, like, all right, maybe there is a little bit of a wake-up call here, and we're moving forward with it. And I just have to look at it that way going forward, because it just seems like, and I've preached on and on about the news and how I used to work in it and how it can be so negative. And I always tell people, just don't watch it. And
don't watch it.
It's out there. It's like ubiquitous or whatever. It gets into your world somehow, some way, but just try not to pay attention to it, because who knows what's going on out there. I don't believe it, and hardly any of it. And it can really affect your mood, I think, So look for positive stuff, like keep the optimism going, and just think of this as like, all right, we're breaking through some stuff here, and things are we're rediscovering maybe ourselves. I think a lot of people are rediscovering themselves and saying, shit, let's just go. And now it's time to live how we want to live. And I think a lot of triathletes get into sport anyway to sort of change their lives. And hopefully it can supplement that change. I think mentally we have to kind of decide on that and go for it.
I like a lot of what you just said right there. And I'll go ahead and give a disclaimer that if you are tuning in for the first time, or you're tuning in today to hear the top 10 best ways to raise your FTP for cycling in the triathlon off season, this isn't going to be it. This is probably going to be more of a life cast. I 100%, agree with you. And we've seen it as coaches. I've seen it more this year than I have at this time last year, which I think it may be odd for people, because this time last year, most people weren't doing anything. They weren't going to see people for the holidays. They were going. I remember I didn't do anything for the holidays last year. Like, it was just, our house. That was it.
You didn't even have a Zoom call?
No, we did a Zoom call, but that was like 10 minutes and was worthless, right? Wow. I remember you saying you went up to your mom's and basically saw like 2 people, and that was it. And you came back you came back totally like unhappy about all of it. And I think a lot of people felt the same way. And I think a lot of people figured this year would be better in that sense. But what I'm finding as personally, and also as a coach, when you work with so many athletes, and we're kind of started our flexibility schedule a lot earlier than we have in the years past, is because, again, I know we've mentioned this in the last 5 to 6 podcasts in some way, shape, or form. This is a different end of year for a lot of athletes. It is not the end of a year. It is the end of 2 years for a lot of people. It is, and I think it's a careful balancing act that I think people are, and I think this speaks to some of the direction you were going in. I think people have had to be so resilient in so many areas of their life and so steadfast that they are ready for to kind of just let go, to become more vulnerable, to change things up, because we've had to be so rigid, right? We've never in our lives lived with so many rules, right? You can't do this, you can't do that. You should do this, you shouldn't do that. You know, you complement that with life, right? And then if you're a parent and you have kids, like, you know, they've had increased rules. You can't do this. It's like we've become like so tight with everything that we've had to do that that causes, like, even if you feel like you're used to it, it still causes low level stress, like, because you always have to be like paying attention to something, or this can't be this, or this can't be that, and then you combine that with so many people who sign up for races in 2019, okay, to race in 2020, and then we had all that, then they have to kind of hold on to it and just kind of stick with it and be resilient. And some people, you know, force themselves to train and race, especially if think about it, a late season. I mean, listen, dude, there's people right now. We've got people lining up to do Arizona and Cozumel this year. They probably signed up for this race in 2019, and we're about 6 weeks away from being 2022. Okay, that's how long people have had to be focused and almost restrained in a way to this one specific goal that more than likely doesn't fit anymore. The shoe doesn't fit, you know, the glove doesn't fit. You must have quit, you know, for you OJ people. Quick OJ thing. His Bronco drive-by was on my birthday. His little white Bronco, like, you know, trembling, and he went down the freeway. That was on my birthday, 1993, I believe. I just got back from watching the original Batman in the movie theater. Two of my buddies, Brandon Preston and Ben Young, who's no longer with us, we came back. We put in Sniper from Blockbuster on VHS, and then all of a sudden we got news that OJ's on the run, and we watched literally OJ drive down his Bronco on the freeway. That was like one of the very first live, like, actual events that I remember ever watching, like, live on the news.
I was gonna say, I feel like that's like the most watched live
it's gotta be
broadcast ever.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, it took over every, sort of like a, you know, a presidential address where they put it on every station.
Yes, it was just really everywhere. Fascinating. But anyway, I don't know how we got to OJ, but
the wrong shoes.
The wrong shoes. But that you feel like you've been restrained to doing one thing, and I'm seeing this so much with athletes that are starting to explore more of what they want to do, who they want to be, what really brings them joy in life. Because not only has life changed, but we've all changed, right? As people, right? In terms of what we want, what we don't want out of life. And in triathlon might have fit that direction. Like, I've had a lot of athletes the last 2 or 3 weeks been like, hey, like, what I've always wanted to do the last 2 years no longer fits in my life. It could be either a long distance triathlon, you know, in the hours and the amount of time you have to commit to that, or it could just be triathlon in general. Like, just 2 quick ones. Like, one guy in Chicago just got done, you know, the past 2 years really, you know, training and racing, only to get to do a few events, getting a big promotion at work. While it's a great thing, company's like exploding. He's like, I don't have time to include rides and swims. Like, so I want to do some strength training and do some running. So let's just focus on that. Perfect. Another one is like, you know, going back to grad school and doing more things, like, you know, let's just run and lift. That's all I'm going to do right now. Let's go for it. Right. I think what happens though is we get so obsessed with the identity of being a triathlete that doing anything else is less. Right. And we talk about this a lot of times, and you talk about it specifically when you talk, or when you mention workouts that should give you energy, right? And bring you happiness or joy, make you feel better when you're over or when you get done with it. A lot of athletes triathletes specifically, are so obsessed with having to do a race, or having to do a specific race, or having to do a full or multiple 70.3s every year to keep that feeling like they have to justify it, like their existence in like endurance sports and overall health and wellness. They have to kind of continue to keep up with the Joneses. And all it does is continue to add more stress. And I think it's a really healthy time when there aren't any races coming and you're trying to responsibly and objectively plan out next year, you know, and the year after that, to look at your life. And before you start with the hours, right? Start with what's important to you, right? What do you want to get out of next year as a human, right? As a person, what's the most important piece of that to you? And if triathlon doesn't fit in it, then that's fine. Then just run, but do what makes you happy. Because again, I feel like so many athletes are going through burnout or yo-yoing or feeling like they're losing the joy in why we got into this in the first place. We didn't get into the sport to take things so seriously. We didn't get into it to be so rigid and to grade and judge ourselves after every 30-minute run based on the same route. We did it to better ourselves. And the betterment of that self, that self who started maybe a year ago, 2 years ago for you, 8, 9 years ago for me, 15 years ago, totally different, like totally different individual in so many ways. So what we need out of the sport or we need out of endurance sports changes every single year based on life, based on circumstance, based on job, relationships. It all changes because the compliments and the type of compliments that we need outside of our regular day-to-day life, that changes and the energy should change. And so I think it's a great time of year to ask yourself those hard questions and then be comfortable in your own race schedule. It's like basically be comfortable in your own skin. Like be comfortable in your own race schedule. If it's one race and that's it, that's all you can do, then more power to you for being objective because you're probably going to be a lot less stressed than the person who's trying to shove in. I just always do that race. I just always do it. But they're going to be so stressed about just doing that one race they have to do, quote unquote, have to do every single year, that it's going to bring them no joy. They're just going to check it off the list like they've got to go do it. It's like going over to your, speaking of the holidays, like going over to that family's house that you just don't like, but you're like, we got to go. Like we have to go every year. We got to go. And then you go there and you're miserable and you leave and you're miserable. I think everybody has that kind of like, not everybody, but at least one person has that one.
Yeah, but a lot of times that wasn't that bad.
That's true. They because you don't talk to them, right? Or you like sit across the room and you're like, hey, how's it going?
I think a lot of times they suspect
what about the weather?
And they're like, yeah, they probably don't feel like coming. Let's be cool though, or whatever. So there's a little bit of
cool. That's right.
We can't escape life. And every once in a while, like yesterday, I told you I had a pretty long day on the computer. We're catching up with. There's a lot of new club members coming in, and I'm trying to get to know them. I'm reading their emails. I'm reading their athlete questionnaire, and then I'll go into email and I'll be like, oh shit, there's that. And then I'm over here. I start paying attention to like how easy it is to get distracted when you're looking at a computer because you're looking at things. There's a tab open and like, oh shit, I forgot to do that. And then next thing you know, you're going down that or whatever like that. We can't escape. And then you try to add, I like what you said about obsessed with the identity of being a triathlete or triathlon, because then this sport's so hard because it's, people that are focused on being runners, they know what they just go run or whatever, the cyclists or whatever, swimming. But when you're combining all three and then you're trying to balance that energy level, because it's, they all seem to, they all obviously burn energy, but I feel like they can burn at different ways and, or, levels depending on what kind of
heat. Yeah. Burns.
It's like if you haven't swam in a while, man, like 1,000 might just rip you to shreds. So you're trying to keep on that, in the ballpark with all three of them. It's very difficult, and I think I talked about last time I went to Wisconsin. And this was probably, other than the fact that I love being up there with my family and everything. I was doing every day, one of my secrets is for nutrition is that I eat kind of weird.
Do you now?
Yeah.
Do you now?
But I have this thing where
this isn't a secret either.
I go off the rail a little bit, and then I always try to counteract that with something, for lack of a better word, sort of meaty or like fulfilling. I force good meals into myself because I don't want to go too far off the track. And when I was home training in Wisconsin, or just on vacation, really, I was forcing in just like a 10-minute little yoga warm-up thing I do, and then I would go run for 20 minutes. And I really felt good. I would get done, and I think, I could go a lot longer, but it comes back to this thing that training and exercise should give you energy, not take it away. And I think if we just use that as a baseline every single day, and I'm telling athletes constantly, hey, I'm not talking to you personally, I'm not seeing you every day. So if I put something in there and you feel a little bit like you want to go over it a little bit. Don't crush it. Or if you just feel like coming under that time goal, do that. Do what feels right and do something. I think we have a really hard time walking away from a workout feeling like we have more in us. and we're energized, and we have this. We want to know when we get out of that pool that it's like hard to walk back to the locker room,
because that means I got better today, right? It was worth it, you know.
Yeah. But I mean, those are obviously those workouts. There's a time and place for them. But you know, hopefully in the integrity of the workout plan, you don't do that the day before you got to go do another ball buster and another one, and you just drain yourself. But I mean, those are, you know, you pick your moments, and for me, picking moments is all about, I feel it today. You know, I'm going to pick this moment and go a little bit harder maybe than I normally would, but not try to thrash myself. But I think it's really important. You know, that's kind of that self-love kind of care thing, because we always, a lot of us are, I hate to say it, but I think a lot of us get in the sport sometimes because we tend to beat ourselves down a lot.
I think the word risk is one of those words that when people hear that, and we talk about it a lot, like, you know, is it worth the risk, right? Usually it's in like, you know, hopping on the track and crushing yourself or doing something irresponsible. But I think for the most part, you know, people, again, hear the word risk and they think negative, right? But I think there's a time and place where risk is actually a positive. Like, you know, because risk to me, especially for athletes, is doing something you're uncomfortable with, right? It's not, and that's not in the terms of like risking your health or your overall trajectory. It's like it's putting yourself in doing something that's uncomfortable or something that's out of the norm, right? Doing something that you wouldn't normally, because when you get into the sport, it's all about kind of playing it safe, right? You do, for the most part, at least you should. Like, you should play it safe. You should take care of yourself. You should, you know, you shouldn't maybe, you know, overextend yourself doing this and that. And this isn't the point isn't to overextend yourself, but to put, it's important, I think, to put yourself in different scenarios for growth, right? And I think so many athletes would be so much better served dipping their toe in the water of a 4-day gravel race, you know, or a 10-mile ocean swim, or an open marathon, or a 50K trail race, or something that's not directly related to, because so many athletes have a job and they treat triathlon like their job, right? So they don't, so it no longer becomes their hobby and their outlet. It becomes another responsibility. It becomes something that they have to do all the time. And that in turn gives them, again, almost no outlet, right? And so I think it's just very important for every athlete to and we talk about this with our athletes this time every year, that is just a very, very good time to dip your toe into something different, to take a risk, to go out and do something different. Like, that's been something that I've been personally working on with my therapist, who has been with me for forever, like Jeff, who was, with me at the ranch, and we've been talking about, I'll be 8 years sober on Saturday. And so we kind of talk about like the evolution of not just not drinking, but being in recovery. And he's been challenging me because he says, like the first 3 to 4 or 5 years of getting sober, you have to play everything careful. You want to play things really close to the vest. You want to be as calculated as you possibly can be. You don't want to take as few risks as possible, because risks can mean more stress, and more stress can mean, can put you closer to wanting to drink again. But he said, once you get over 5 years, it's time to take risks. It's time to live more. It's time to grow more. It's time to push it, because you should feel more concreted in where you are. But what he sees a lot, and admittedly, even with myself, I'll admit it, is like you become so comfortable in that kind of like bubble and cocoon that you're almost afraid to kind of take a risk, right?
And see how that could almost have a reverse effect.
But he says,
you would force a risk just to get excitement or something.
Right, but see, he doesn't mean like a forced risk, in terms, he means of like just doing things that make you feel uncomfortable, right?
No, but I mean actively doing it versus passively.
Right, yeah. His thing is like, don't, he's not going to give you a list of like 10 things to go and take risks of. He's like, next time you're like, I don't want to do that. Be like, do it. Like, do it. Not because it's irresponsible, because it's part of just your natural progression and growth in recovery, is to do things that aren't normally comfortable. His thing is in a different way now than it used to be, was, if it's something you always say no to, say yes. Like if it's something like, hey, you want to go to this, it's like, stop saying no, say yes.
I got in big trouble on a yes week once, but go ahead.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you can always get into trouble with that. But, for me, it'd be something like, hey, why don't you stay up until 10 o'clock and play, cards with us? Don't go to bed at 8 o'clock. Yes. Instead of saying, no, I'm going to sleep, that's a tough one. But I think for athletes, it's like, hey, changing things up and saying no or saying yes, things you would normally it's about freedom, and it's about learning more about yourself, not just about who you are as an athlete and in endurance sports, but you will grow exponentially by doing different things, whether it's going and challenging yourself in a shorter course events or longer course, or doing something different, a trail race or a mountain bike race, because what it does, it detaches you. It becomes, I think it reinvigorates your spirit of why we do this, which is it's a hobby, right? And I mentioned this a few seconds ago too, is that like we started this as a hobby, right? As a complement to our life, to bring us better health and wellness, to invigorate us mentally and emotionally and even spiritually for some people, and then improve our physical health. And over the course of time, it's kind of like say, don't ever make your passion, your true love, your job, because then you'll lose it and all you'll have is your job, right? Mm-hmm. And that's how I think a lot of people take triathlon. They get into it and they fall in love with it, and then they become so serious about it, it no longer becomes a hobby, it becomes a responsibility. It can't be your place to be free. It becomes a place where you feel restrained. You feel like there are expectations. You feel like you have to meet certain objectives. We have all of life, right? Every other aspect of life, you have expectations, obligations. You have people you got to answer to. You got people you got to provide for. You got to pay bills. You have to live on this earth. Like there's so many other things that require so much, that take things from us, that we have a responsibility to ourselves. And if we want to succeed in life, then we have to be able to give something to ourselves. And I think triathlon in general lends itself, because it's become so tech heavy and so social media driven, and comparison and expectations and all these things, to where it no longer becomes, it's just become more of the rat race that is life, that is keeping up, than is the spiritual and mental and emotional journey that many of us, myself included, got into it for in the first place.
Mm. Yeah. And going back to, I think the last year and a half has really made it tougher to step out of your comfort zone, because there's been a natural, I guess, suppression of that life force in a lot of ways, where, like I'm the HOA president. I think you knew that, but I hear about it every day. Should we have a meeting? Let's do a Zoom meeting. And I'm like, we all live here. We're going to meet and talk about. I mean, I think it's just
no one wants to meet in person, because then you have to actually work on conflict management.
Well, yeah, that's true too. Yeah, well, so you don't get
everybody's tough behind the keyboard.
It's just been so easy to kind of turn in and just say, well, we'll just stay in. I don't need to go anywhere to do that. I can do that from here, and which is a great. It's all that. How do you balance technology with life, your life force, and things like that? And I think you brought up a interesting point about don't do something you love, and I find that kind of ironic, because we did that, but I think. And I'm grateful that both of us have that sort of same mentality about that, because this podcast has never been work for us. I don't feel like, we just, and that's why it is what you guys get, because we just kind of,
that's right. That's why we're steadily mediocre. Right?
Yeah. But there's no doubt in my mind is if we would have tried to be something we're not, this podcast would not be going anymore. But it becomes what it is, and I think that's maybe a good thing anyway. And I think you gotta, feed your soul and not, waver on that, because that makes you better for everyone too. And it there's just so many things that we can do now and get distracted by, and we're just trying to do every little thing to please every little person. And it's not. I'm not talking about us. I'm talking about everybody. It's just anybody in the world can email you at any given time now and get in your business, about something and
expect an answer immediately.
Right. Yeah.
Immediately.
And then then you have that in your head, man. It's a very weird time, but I just think it's harder than ever to get out and do what you're saying, is take those risks or get uncomfortable, because even the simplest things like, hey, let's go to an art show.
To be fair, it's an art show.
It is an art show. Let's go see some comedy. Well, no, we can just watch it on YouTube. You know what I mean? I think that's a real thing, because everything is at your fingertips. Even that, virtual art show. Go watch comedy online. You don't need to go out and sit in a dumb room and
sit in a dumb room.
But with other people, that's ridiculous. We can just do it here. Okay. And then
No
you just
one
kinda,
laughs as
sink
loud.
deeper and deeper and deeper.
No one laughs as loud alone as they do with other people.
Oh, heck
It's just
no,
it's
'cause
just
it's
a
an
fact.
energy.
It's an energy.
And it's uncomfortable in this, I think. It's just like the guy's looking at you, telling you a joke. Especially if they're dumb jokes. Like if the comedian's looking right at you and he kind of gives you that look, you know,
better laugh.
It becomes funnier for a different reason, or it's like a human.
Well, you don't want.
connection.
Sometimes you don't want to go to a comedy show because if you sit close enough, then you might be the guy.
I know.
You might be the guy they pick on. Like, stand like, hey, over there looking like so and so, like wearing the same pair of sweatpants, probably worn for the last
The whole
2
show,
weeks.
you become
the whole show. You're that guy, and
how much fun that would be. Really uncomfortable, but how much fun that would be later in your life, and be like, man, that was
unless it scarred you for life, and you're like, I've never gotten over that one day at the comedy club, at the Laugh Factory or whatever, where
I've never gotten over that 4th grade class.
I mean, people like to pick on people. But no, like I had this, I think to an extent, society has driven us this way. And I think even the sport has driven us this way, is we've started to put who we are and what we really need and want out of life on the back burner. It has become so much about what we do, what the image that we perceive, and that's everyone's social media, like, is to project perfection and happiness and no stress and vacations and Michelin star fillets. Like that is what social media is. It's not about the rough crap that people go through. That's what it is. But what we need more of isn't that. What we need more of is true, authentic things that we can do for ourselves. But we've become so busy with life that we just don't take that time anymore. So we don't do things that nurture and take care of ourselves as people, because we have so many responsibilities and obligations, which is, again, what triathlon seems for people. Like I had this incredibly enlightening discussion with an athlete on the way to run camp, like a 30-minute phone call, and we did an Ironman, late season Ironman together. And the last month and a half, 2 months, they've just been having a really, really hard time making time for themselves. And they're a single mom, and they've, which they're like, I can't find time, or I don't want to make the time because I feel like, I use so much time before Ironman that I got to get it back. Right. Mm-hmm. And this athlete was like, even my kids are like, have you worked out today? Not in like you need to go get in shape, but in like I can tell by your mood that you haven't worked out today. Mm-hmm. And so we kind of went back and forth on the mom guilt, which is a very real thing, and like prioritizing time for yourself. And I was like, your kids are even telling you that what you did before was best, right? Was best for you. And then it also makes you a better parent to your kids. I know it's a fine line to walk, but I said, I'm not going to work with you until for 2 weeks straight, you can call me up, and in Training Peaks, you can show me that you made yourself a priority for at least 30 minutes a day. I don't care what it is. I don't care how you do it. But I said, at least 6 out of those 7 days a week, you have to do it alone. I said, I know you love your kids, but you have to go out and do something alone. You can't always be on the trainer and have your kids doing it with you. While I know it's gratifying and fun, space is also needed. Community is also crucial, but space is also needed, right? To rejuvenate and let ourselves have our own thoughts and our own feelings and work through things. Like we have to have that quietness as well in order to thrive around people and within the community. We have to have that time. So that in 2 weeks, you call me and you've made time, because if you can't make yourself a priority, and if you can't carve out that time and show yourself that you're important, and what you do is also important, and it's not selfish, it's called self-care. Like those are two, those words get intertwined so often, this fine line between I feel selfish or this is actually self-care, right? Like this is me being it's also very common in AA. They call it a selfish program, but in my opinion, it's not. It's about self-care, right? And self-care is never selfish. It is something that we all need to do, but I feel like it gets lost in the responsibilities and the pressure we put on ourselves. And even when people go into an hour and a half workout, they see in Training Peaks, oh, well, this work, I need to average this watts, or I need to meet this pace, which is like, then what if I don't? What does that say about me? And then this workout no longer becomes about me releasing stress. Now it added more stress to my life because I didn't meet a certain expectation within a workout. Now, what does that say about me? And so instead of relieving stress, it just adds stress. And we don't need any more stress. There's enough. There's plenty to go around in life right now.
Yeah. There is a lot of that. And I think, a lot of people get frustrated with me at times because I'm a little late or something. But like,
dude.
But I really do. I mean, like even this morning, I was probably 10 minutes late for the podcast, but I was up there doing my thing, I was getting some yoga in and getting my act together. And I think that you can really tell, whether somebody's been through like, a counseling session or has done some self-care work. It's just better for everybody. It's not selfish. We need, like you're saying, we need that time to kind of be able to interact with people in a sort of a sane manner. If we keep just forcing it and you keep showing up to work and you're like always pissed off or whatever, and I used to do a lot of yoga with this guy, and he would talk about that downward. If you get in downward dog for like 5-10 minutes every morning, your day is going to be completely different. And I think if we break this thing down, you're talking about, do a little something every day and you seem like a better parent or person or whatever. Mm-hmm. I mean, let's break it down, man. It's simply, you get your blood moving, and it's just this biological change in your body. It's just hard. Can we talk about a little bit of how to get there? Because I think that's the thing too, right? Is that we talk about community like at Run Camp. There's no way I would do what we did if I was just sitting out there at that lodge by myself. It's just sort of everybody's gathering, or whatever it takes. If you have a support group or whatever, I mean, I think that's a huge piece of that puzzle. And I think a lot of times that becomes what coaches do, because there's just somebody who cares, right, on the other end. And you're in the room going, man, I don't feel like running, but I don't want to have to tell coach I didn't run or whatever. And it's go out and walk. And then maybe run if you feel like it or whatever. Because I think, it's just simple. I go through that all the time with my walking the dog. He's like, oh man, I'm tired. Whatever. On the third floor, and Maddie's got to come downstairs or whatever. And then you just get out there and you walk around, and that's it. That's all you need. That's all you need.
We better list some actionable items. We might get ripped on the podcast reviews for not listing actionable items.
Yeah.
Go through things. First thing, I love what you said. Go for a walk. Like literally, you must leave your phone behind. Required. Don't go for a 30-minute walk. I think everybody should spend 30 minutes away from their phone a day, minimum, when they're actually awake, not when they're asleep. 30 minutes away and run with your thoughts. Go with them, because that's the biggest thing. I think most of us, we don't, everything is so accessible that we can distract ourselves whenever we want to, all the time, 24/7. So we're actually never left alone with our thoughts, because it's so quick to be able to jump and distract ourselves, to be like, and then all of a sudden they come flooding in like a month or two later, and you start dealing with all these emotions that you just kind of bent up. Take 30 minutes to yourself, whether it's that's why people, and this has always been how it's been. People get out of the pool and they're like, I feel so much better. I solved all the world's problems. I discovered all these new things. I had like 5 different inventions. I wrote 3 books. It's because you can't do anything else. You can't pick up your phone. You can't look. I mean, you can try to look at data if you want to, but it's meaningless. You're just left with your thoughts. All you're left to do is forcefully think through things, feel through things, and you end up kind of coming out and be like, I kind of feel like refreshed. You're absolutely starving, but you're refreshed. 30 minutes without any kind of device, work through your thoughts. The other thing I would say is actually speak to somebody in person. I mean, and I will readily admit, like, this, being able to do this, because even like people that I talk to that work in offices, like, they don't even speak to each other. Like, they work in a cubicle, they work on the same floor, but they don't speak to anybody. Like, one of the greatest things that I'm so incredibly grateful for that happened last year was that we still had a place where we could still come. It was just you and I. We weren't going to shut it down, but we had 2 hours a week where you could have a meaningful conversation, which ended up being 2 podcasts a week, to connect with another person and in person, live, and that's just something that you can't replace. You can't replicate it. You can't replicate a lunch with a buddy or a coffee or anything, because even if you don't want to go do it, once you get done, you're like, I don't want to, let's just sit and chat for a little while. You never want it to end because you're like, now I got to go back to just kind of being, the way it was before. Get out and connect and do things. Another thing I would say is do something outside in nature you would normally do. Whether it's a hike, like I've got a lot of athletes right now that are like doing weighted hikes, like put a big pack on and go for a hike. Get out in nature, enjoy, like detach yourself from the expectation of a pace or a time or a new fastest segment. Get outside for the joy of being outside. There have been so many studies about the benefits to mood and its effect on depression and anxiety of getting people outside and into nature, and whether it's taking in sunlight or just being around nature in general, how it elevates people's moods. And I think it's the more things you can do the more things you can list out and start to check off your list, maybe add in like do something you're scared of, do something you're maybe not been putting off, but that you've not scared of, but you've been putting off because you're nervous or anxious to do it, and do it and put it on your list, because it'll create momentum. It'll create kind of an avalanche, I think, of confidence to continue to do things you would normally have done before. And then it opens up a whole new door to opportunities you may have never had.
Yeah. If there's something out there that you think about a lot that scares you, it's probably the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
Because think about the buzz of that, I've done that a lot actually, but the one that I always remember is when I was just always wanted to be a drummer, and then I decided I was going to be a drummer, and I had been practicing maybe a month, and I was at this bar, and it was an open stage, and they had three guys up there, and they're like, "Is there any drummers?" And then one of the guys goes, "He's been playing drums." I go, "No, I haven't. I've just been I had no idea how to play a song or any of that kind of stuff." And they dragged me up on stage. It scared the living. I was never probably that more embarrassed and nervous and what have you. It was the most awful place I'd been in a long time. And I walked off the stage, and there's this regular guy there. He used to sit in a recliner. No shit. He brought his own recliner in, and he was this big old dude that just used to have, just sit there all night and drink in a recliner in the bar. And I go, well, and I knew him fairly well. And I go, what do you think? And he goes, well, I've heard worse. And that was all
like, hey,
it took.
I'll take it.
I said, then it just kind of threw me into this thing about, I was obsessed with it, but it was really an electric time in my life. But anyway, I think you go towards what scares you, because that's probably your soul telling you that it's like, you got to go there, whatever it is, and for actionable stuff, because it's something as simple for me, because we tend to, I think a lot of people do this now. They work at home. A lot more people work at home, and they get up and they just throw on some sweats and go sit down and start working or whatever. But for me, I notice like when I even just get in a shower, it's hard, like it can get a little bit harder to just get in the shower, and then you get in there and you know how it is. My dad used to be this way all the time. He'd come out and he'd start talking to me about some business idea, and I'll be like, that ain't bad. I thought of that in the shower.
Yeah, same thing as swimming.
Yeah,
it's just an elongated version.
So when you get in the shower, and then like I always try to tell people, it's like, inch that water down a little bit colder, and then end with a quick cold blast. That'll wake you up. It'll kind of get you back in the game real quick.
Gross. I don't know when I was in the pool. No, listen, just doing anything that can detach you. I love what you said about the more you think about it, the more terrified you are, you should do it, because that's generally like, if it was actually terrifying and dangerous, you wouldn't think about it anymore, because it's like, oh, I don't have to do that. But I love what you said about the being on the stage and doing something that's drumming. It's like, it was absolutely terrifying, to do. But then you think about once you finally
can't hide
did
mistakes. I'll tell you that right now.
I can't imagine. Like, no thanks. Like, I want zero part of that. But dude, but going back to what I said earlier about, risks being, oh, that's bad. You don't take risks. That was a risk. Like you risked humiliation and, like never wanting to be a drummer ever again. And, being the laughing stock of Beloit, wherever it was when you did this, it's like, it's a huge risk. Right. But then just hearing like those words when you got done, that was like, yeah, you're not the worst I've ever heard. You're like, I'll take it. Like, that's all I needed. And with those things, you shouldn't be looking for some like, hit the lottery type event where you like find your calling, right? You're like, I never wanted to run. I've always been terrified to run. And then I went and ran it and I broke every record. Like, that's not going to happen, right?
Right. Yeah.
You got to kind of shelve the expectations, but it's about growth and it's about challenging yourself, because when you do those kind of things, like you should remove, what comes along with the consistency and the repetitive nature that is training, that you always kind of end up measuring yourself. But when we start to take risks or do things that are uncomfortable or sign up for a race we would never sign up for, a lot of people end up doing so much better and training so much better because they don't know what to expect, because they don't have any expectations, because they've never done it before. So It becomes more fun. And if it's more fun, they do it more and they're more consistent. They feel more energized and they're happy. And if you're happier and you're more consistent, you're going to race better, instead of just this consistent paralyzed feeling of monotony that so many athletes find themselves in. Go off script. Don't be so effing afraid to go off script. Give yourself a round of applause for cutting a workout short, or, choosing a different trail, or riding 4 hours with your friends, instead of 2. Those are risks for a lot of athletes. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not going to do this. Do it. You don't have to change up every single day, but my God, live a little, right? This is what we do is supposed to allow us opportunities to live more and to live better and to live more free. And what happens is it actually shrinks for so many athletes the bubble that they find themselves in, because I'm sorry, but I can't run on I can't do trails because I might hurt myself. Well, that sounds like a terrible way to live, right? Because you avoid so many things that might hurt yourself, right? Yes, to have a general rule of thumb, don't go out and play pick up basketball 2 weeks before your Ironman. Yes, please don't do that. The 20 weeks before it, go out and play flag football, play pickup basketball, ultimate frisbee, cross country skiing. Live a little. Don't confine yourself 24/7 to where, so many people do that to themselves that they forget to have fun, they forget to live, and they forget to be flexible, because being flexible is where most of the fun is, right? It's going off script, doing something that's not. The most fun that people have at camp has nothing to do with running. It's the games we play, or the stuff that's totally off script. It's got nothing to do with triathlon or running. It's you do something that's just odd, right? It's just it's like your diet. It's just odd, right? So you do it, you have fun. There's no pressure. You're just gonna do what feels right. You have a good time, move on. And you can't. Well, I can compare it to last year, and according to last year, I made it across the pond in 2.5 seconds. So I'm really not doing very well. Have some fun, be flexible, step out of your comfort zone and do anything that you haven't done before.
And I think that's an important thing to hear, right? From your coach.
Right.
Because, there is this thing about being in that box that, and I struggle with it too, because what you're saying, when you start a sport, or when something's new to you, it is that fuel. And that's exactly what happened to me for many, many years. And now I think even, that's why these conversations are good for us as well, because when I hear these things over and over, and especially today, it helps me, give me permission a little bit more. And I think when you identify so hard as a triathlete and then you start thinking, well, that's not what I do, but it's what I love to do, or what I used to love to do. Why wouldn't you do it? We're not holding you in this, corralling you into this space of only swim, bike, run, or whatever it may be. And I think it goes way further than just athletics or whatever. You just, because when I got into the sport, I remember this specifically, that I started shutting things off that I actually used to like to do. And then it became this kind of internal dilemma with me. I was like, wait, I used to like to make films, or I used to like to mountain bike, or I used to, love go see music or whatever. And the next thing you know, I was just a triathlete, and that's all I did. And I wanted to get good at that. But I think in the long run, that's That's a dangerous territory.
Because like we said, it's no longer your hobby, right? It's no longer your outlet. It's just something else to grade yourself on and to judge yourself on unhealthy. Yes, do you want to get better and be faster and be more fit? Absolutely. But the incessant obsessive nature that so many people like bring to it.
It's a rigidness too.
It is.
I think you need to loosen your, mentality and your body up and not be so rigid as to, I can only do this. Live. Like you're saying, live a little.
Switch days. Like switch every day if you need to. Like just do whatever you freaking need to get it in. And like, it's like, seriously, it's like.
Delete that whole training week.
I know. It's just like, some people, it's like, it's like a huge advertisement for like the necessity and need of having a coach, but there is. It's like having us on retainer for when shit goes bad, but you need somebody to look over your shit, okay, to make sure you're not making it bad. But there's so much flexibility that you can have, and stop being so rigid. It's like becomes a chore. Like it just becomes one more thing that's not fun in your life anymore. Have some effing fun, with it, and relax, because that's what leads to burnout. Like that's just how people get burnouts, because they take it so seriously. Again, you look at people who burn out in relationships or burn out with work or burn out with anything else. It's because you went too far in and you lost perspective of what you were doing it for in the first place. You and I have had a billion different ideas we've come up with. We've probably only done 4 of them, right? It's like because sometimes we have an idea and we go back and we change it because we feel like we lose sight of why we started to do this in the first place, right? Like, every year, every quarter we get, maybe we ought to do ads. Maybe we ought to do spots.
Right.
It's like probably the biggest one. Some people are like, no, we'll never listen again. You guys always said, you hypocrites, and then you got the other friend. It's like, hey, gotta get paid, baby. So you have like the 2 ends of the spectrum, and then we're also kind of like, God. So we'll like go through and we'll talk about it and we'll kind of, run the numbers. I'm like, yeah, could we make more money doing ads and sponsors? For sure. But at the end of the day, like, I don't know. We do know because we haven't. Is that I don't like the way it would make me feel.
Oh my God.
Because it was what? Is that what you're gonna say?
Yeah,
it's because it does. I don't like the way.
You reading an ad would just make me.
Me too. Because I would feel fake. Yeah, and that's like one of. Listen, our podcast sucks in a lot of ways, but we're authentic. Like what you see is what you get. What you hear is what you get, and it would make me feel less authentic. And the last thing I want to do, like you talked about, is show up to this podcast and feel like it was a job. Because then it would become a job. Because then we don't just have to answer to ourselves, right? And putting out twice a week. Then we have to start answering, to a sponsor and a product, and to slide it in 2 or 3 times, a podcast. It would become a job. And that's, I think, one of the things that we've held so tightly on. Because when people are like, so why do what do you mean you don't make any money? Like we're talking to Melissa and Susan who helped us, sell our content. They're like, you don't do sponsors, and like, how do you make money? And we're like, we don't know. We just show up, twice a week and do it. And, we have this huge community of people that honestly is the most invaluable, priceless thing you ever put a dollar amount on. But it's kind of one of those things where you have to, if you find yourself loving something, you have to do everything that you can possibly do to make sure it doesn't become a chore, right? It just can stay a pure, untouched, something that you just love to do. Mm-hmm. But the more you analyze, and the more it becomes a part of a life where you got to generate money. Like how you gonna monetize your podcast is like we got to go to a couple of podcast seminars and workshops. Like this is how you got to change your website. You got to get we could put you at the top of the SEO list on podcast generation. I'm like, I don't even know what that is, right? I don't even know what to do. People walk by the hub and they're probably like, how the hell are they still open? What do you even do here? And then you tell people and they're like, I don't understand. No. You're like, I don't get it. Which is fine, but it's the reason that we're still here doing it is because we love it. And it's because we've kept it to that low level again of expectation, but that low level of it's not a responsibility, it's not a job, it's just something that we truly love to do. And I think the more you go back and kind of peel back the layers of your training and your what you're trying to get out of the sport, and get back to the raw nature that is just leaving your house and going for a run, with buddies or friends or with your dog. Oh, well, if I did with my dog, I got to make sure I notify in Training Peaks it was with my dog. Like, this is my dog, and this is where he pooped twice. This is where he pooped twice. Like, so I didn't get slower. He had to poop twice, and then I forgot to restart my watch. And so, I had to add it back, because we're going to mess up my ATL, my CTL, and Training Peaks, and really mess up my entire year. All the data's going to be, watch it. So just know. You're like, oh my God, like if that's what you were thinking about in the 30-minute run with your dog, then you did your dog a disservice, right? Because they're out there having like the greatest time with their plan, and your owner's out there running like, why is my owner looking at their watch the entire time? Pay attention to me. I'm running, my tongue's hanging out, my ears are flapping, I'm loving life, I'm sniffing trees, I smell urine, somebody's in heat 4 houses down. Like, they're living the dream. Us, we're checking your watch rate fast, saying the heart rate's way too high. I'm in zone 3. Slow down, Jimmy. Like we had to go a little bit slower today. Coach said zone 1, zone 2. Can't go to zone 3. It's going to really, I'm in the gray zone. I'm in the gray zone. Slow down, buddy. It's like, that's like run like a dog. Okay. Enjoy yourself. Have fun. If you got to take a leak, stop and take a leak.
Yeah. One philosophy I have when I'm in a good training groove is, how can what I'm doing today help me look forward to what I'm going to do tomorrow? I still struggle with that a little bit in the off season, but when I find a groove during the season, that's what happens. I don't do anything crazy. I just want to get, do today in a way that feels good and it makes me look forward to tomorrow.
Yep.
And I think that can apply to everything.
Yeah, everything, including this podcast.
Yeah. Let's have another one tomorrow, man.
I'll probably stick with Monday.
A triple.
The trip? Yeah, I don't know about
the trifecta. The first trifecta.
Speaking of Trip Thurston at First American Bank.
Shout out to you.
Shout out to you. But no, that was it. Hope you enjoyed it. I don't really know what we talked about, but I hope you got something out of it. I'm sure
this is going to be one of those ones.
Oh, this will be one of the ones where I'm like, hey, I was podcast. I'm like 3 out of 10 for sure.
3 out of 10.
Maybe 3.
We'll get the most emails.
We'll get the most emails from this one. They're like, hey, I really got a lot out of it. And then you'll have the one Facebook poster. When are you guys ever going to talk about, how to better yourself on my 5K time next March?
Right.
I'm like, you're right, buddy. We do this podcast for you.
What's that thing that people always say? For you. If we can help one person.
Yeah, that's right. We can help one person.
That's all I care about.
We're shooting low, baby. One person. It might have been you. It might not, but it was definitely us. Go to our website, c26triathlon.com. It's your one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. If you're interested in taking advantage of our club membership, the Club Plus or the Club Hub package, make sure you hit that now. It is getting close to capacity, so get on that. If you have any questions about it specifically, email Mike. He's at crushingiron@gmail.com. If you have any questions for me specifically, I'm at c26coach@gmail.com.
All right, buddy. Have a great day.
Come with the dog.